For Prince Harry to transform from gracious guest to explosive antagonist, unleashing a verbal assault so shocking that it left Howard Stern speechless and the view panel scrambling for damage control. This is the untold story of the most catastrophic celebrity meltdown ever caught on live television. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the View studio as makeup artists made their final touches. Prince Harry sat in the guest chair, adjusting his tie with the confidence of someone who had never been truly challenged on American television. Howard Stern, guest hosting for the day, shuffled his notes while the show's regular panel settled into their seats. Whoopi Goldberg glanced at the clock. Joy Behar cracked her knuckles, and Sunny Hostin reviewed her questions one last time. 30 seconds to air, called the floor manager. Harry smiled that practiced royal smile, the one that had charmed millions across the globe. He had no idea he was about to become the most hated guest in daytime television history. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to The View. I'm Howard Stern, filling in today, and we have quite the show for you. Howard's gravelly voice filled the studio as the cameras rolled. Our guest this morning is Prince Harry, here to discuss his latest charitable endeavors and life in America. The audience applauded politely as Harry waved. Everything seemed perfectly normal. So Harry, thanks for being here. I gotta ask, how's life treating you since you moved to California? You seem to be everywhere these days. Harry's smile faltered slightly. Well, Howard, I appreciate the question, but I think we should focus on the important work I'm doing rather than tabloid gossip. The first red flag. Howard raised an eyebrow. Tabloid gossip? I'm just asking how you're doing, man. Relax. I am relaxed, Harry snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. I just think your question should be more appropriate for someone of my position. The studio fell silent. Whoopi shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Joy's mouth dropped open slightly. Even the camera operators seemed to sense the sudden tension crackling through the air. Howard leaned back, genuinely puzzled. Your position? What position is that exactly? You're just a guy who married into a family, right? The question hung in the air like a live grenade. Harry's face flushed red, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair so tightly his knuckles went white. Just a guy? Harry's voice rose an octave. Just a guy? Do you have any idea who you're talking to? I'm a prince of the British Empire. I served in Afghanistan. I've done more for charity than you could ever dream of. Howard's famous smirk appeared. Easy there, Prince. We're all friends here. But you came on an American talk show, so you're going to get American talk show questions. American questions from American hosts who clearly don't understand respect. Harry shot back. In England, journalists know their place. The gasps from the audience were audible. Sunny Hostin jumped in, trying to salvage the situation. Harry, I think Howard was just trying to make conversation. Maybe we can talk about your work with veterans instead? Harry turned his glare toward her. And maybe you can let me finish speaking without interrupting. That would be a nice change. Joy Behar's face turned red. Excuse me? Did you just tell Sunny to be quiet? I told her to show some manners, something that seems to be lacking on this entire panel. The studio erupted. Audience members started murmuring among themselves. The producers in the control room frantically gestured at the floor manager. This was spiraling out of control faster than anyone could have imagined. Howard held up a hand. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Time out, Your Highness. You're coming into our house, on our show. And you're going to lecture us about manners? That's rich. Your house? Harry laughed bitterly. This pathetic little studio? This is nothing compared to the palaces I grew up in. You people have no idea what real class looks like. Whoopi finally exploded. Real class? Real class doesn't come in here acting like we should bow down to you. This is America, honey. We don't do the whole royalty thing here. Clearly, Harry sneered. That much is obvious from the way you're all behaving. In civilized countries, there's something called decorum. Howard stood up from his chair. Civilized countries? What the hell is wrong with you, man? We invited you here as a guest, and you're treating us like we're your servants. Because that's exactly what you are. Harry exploded, rising from his own chair. You're all just servants in the entertainment industry, dancing for money while I actually matter in this world. The audience collectively gasped. Someone in the back rows actually booed. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of Harry's spectacular public meltdown. Joy pointed her finger at him. Did you just call us servants? Did he just call us servants? If the shoe fits, Harry replied coldly. You make your living gossiping about your betters. What else would you call it? Sunny stood up, her voice shaking with anger. Your betters? Your betters? You're sitting here insulting people who built their own careers, their own success, calling us servants? I'm stating facts, Harry said, straightening his jacket as if he were addressing Parliament instead of having a complete breakdown on daytime television. You people worship celebrities and royalty because you know you'll never be anything more than what you are right now. The studio was in chaos now. Audience members were shouting. The panel was on their feet. Howard looked like he wanted to physically remove Harry from the building himself. That's it, Howard declared, his voice cutting through the noise. You know what? I've had enough of this spoiled brat routine. Harry whirled around to face him. Spoiled brat? Spoiled brat? Do you know what I sacrificed to be here? Do you know what I gave up? Yeah, you gave up a life of luxury to come here and act like you're doing us a favor by breathing the same air? Howard shot back. Newsflash, Prince. Nobody forced you to leave England. That was your choice. My choice? Harry's voice cracked with emotion, but not the kind that generated sympathy. This was pure, entitled rage. My choice was taken away from me by a system that never understood what I was trying to accomplish. Whoopi threw her hands up in exasperation. Oh, here we go with the victim complex. Poor little prince. Life was so hard in the castle. You have no idea what you're talking about, Harry seethed. None of you do. You sit here in your little studio, making your little jokes, thinking you understand the world, but you're all just. Just what? Joy challenged. Say it. What are we? Harry paused, realizing he had painted himself into a corner. But instead of backing down, instead of apologizing, instead of showing even a shred of the class he claimed to possess, he doubled down. You're all beneath me. The words hit the studio like a physical blow. The audience fell completely silent. Even the crew members stopped what they were doing and stared. In the control room, executives were probably reaching for their phones to call legal departments and crisis management teams. Howard slowly sat back down, shaking his head in disbelief. Beneath you, we're beneath you. That's right, Harry continued, apparently oblivious to the magnitude of his mistake. I was born into greatness. I was raised to lead, to serve something bigger than myself. You people just exist. Sonny's voice was barely controlled. Just exist? I'm a lawyer. I worked my way through law school. I've argued cases in front of the Supreme Court. And I'm sure that makes you feel very important, Harry replied dismissively. But at the end of the day, you're still just a television personality trading on gossip and controversy. That's rich coming from someone whose entire identity is based on who his grandmother was, Joy fired back. Harry's face contorted with fury. My grandmother was the Queen of England. She represented something noble, something pure, something you Americans could never understand, because you have no history, no tradition, no real culture. The studio erupted again, but this time it was different. This wasn't just shock or surprise. This was genuine anger, the kind that comes when someone crosses a line so far that there's no going back. Howard leaned forward, his voice deadly serious. No real culture? Buddy, you just insulted an entire nation on live television. You think that's going to play well? I think the truth needs to be said, Harry replied, his chin raised defiantly. Americans worship wealth and fame because they have nothing else to believe in. No monarchy, no real traditions, just commerce. Commerce that pays for your Netflix deals and your fancy house in Montecito, Whoopi pointed out. Harry's face went even redder. That's completely different. I'm using American resources to spread awareness about important causes. Oh, so now you're using us? Sonny asked incredulously. First we're beneath you, now you're using us? I'm working within the system to create change, Harry said, his voice getting higher and more strained. Something none of you would understand because you're all just cogs in the machine. Howard had heard enough. Cogs in the machine? Lady and gentlemen, this is what privilege looks like when it goes completely off the rails. This section ends here, setting up the perfect transition for section 2, where Harry's meltdown reaches even more shocking heights. Privilege? Harry's voice cracked like a whip across the silent studio. You want to talk about privilege? Look around you, Howard. You've made millions talking into a microphone, making crude jokes about people who actually matter. That's privilege. Howard's jaw dropped. In 30 years of radio and television, through countless celebrity meltdowns and explosive interviews, he had never encountered anything quite like this level of delusional arrogance. People who actually matter? Howard repeated slowly, as if he couldn't believe the words had actually come out of Harry's mouth. So we don't matter? The people watching at home don't matter? Not in the grand scheme of things, no, Harry replied with the casual cruelty of someone who had never been held accountable for his words. You entertain people. I inspire them. There's a difference. The audience was beyond gasps now. Someone in the front row actually stood up and started walking toward the exit. Others followed. The mass exodus of disgusted viewers was being captured in real time by the cameras that continued to roll, documenting every second of Harry's professional suicide. Joy slammed her hand on the table so hard that her coffee cup jumped. Inspire them? You inspire them? You quit your job and moved to California to make money off Netflix. I left a corrupt system to pursue meaningful work. Harry shot back, his composure completely shattered now. Something none of you would understand because you've never stood for anything in your entire lives. Sunny stood up again, her lawyer instincts kicking in. Never stood for anything? Whoopi has been fighting for civil rights longer than you've been alive. Joy has been speaking truth to power for decades. What exactly have you done besides complain about your family? Harry turned on her with vicious intensity. What have I done? I served in Afghanistan while you people were safe at home making jokes. I've raised millions for wounded veterans while you've been gossiping about celebrities. And we respect that, Howard interjected, trying one last time to bring some sanity to the conversation. But that doesn't give you the right to come in here and treat us like garbage. Garbage? Harry laughed, a sound devoid of any humor. That's actually quite accurate. This whole show is garbage. American television is garbage. The only reason I agreed to come here was to try to elevate the conversation, but clearly that's impossible with this crowd. Whoopi had reached her breaking point. This crowd? This crowd includes Emmy winners, best-selling authors, and respected journalists. But you know what? I'm done trying to reason with someone who thinks his bloodline makes him better than everyone else. My bloodline does make me better, Harry declared without hesitation. That's literally what royalty means. It means being born to lead, being raised with values and principles that common people don't possess. The studio fell into a shocked silence so complete that you could hear the camera mechanisms whirring. Even the production staff had stopped moving. This wasn't just a meltdown anymore. This was a man revealing his true character in the most public way possible. Howard leaned back in his chair, studying Harry like he was some kind of exotic animal in a zoo. Common people? Did you just call us common people? Well, what would you call yourselves? Harry asked with genuine curiosity, as if he couldn't understand why anyone would be offended. You work for a living. You answer to bosses. You worry about ratings and paychecks. That's the definition of common. Joy's face had gone from red to purple. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college. I started at the bottom of this industry and worked my way up through talent and determination. How is that common? Because anyone can do that, Harry replied dismissively. Anyone can work hard. Not everyone can be born into greatness. Sunny pointed at him accusingly. Born into greatness? You were born into wealth. There's a difference. Wealth that comes with responsibility, Harry countered. Wealth that comes with a duty to serve something larger than yourself. You people serve yourselves and your bank accounts. Howard had been in the entertainment business long enough to recognize when someone had completely lost touch with reality. Serve something larger? Buddy, you literally quit serving. You walked away from your royal duties to become a celebrity. I walked away from an institution that was holding me back from making real change, Harry exploded. I could have stayed in England, cutting ribbons and making small talk, but I chose to come here and use media platforms to spread important messages. Important messages like calling Americans culturally inferior? Whoopi asked sarcastically. I'm trying to help Americans understand that there are better ways to live, Harry said, with the earnest intensity of someone who genuinely believed he was performing a public service. You're all so focused on money and fame that you've lost sight of what really matters. The irony was apparently lost on him completely. Joy threw her hands up in exasperation. What really matters? Says the guy who signed multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix and Spotify? I signed those deals to fund my charitable work, Harry replied, his voice taking on a lecturing tone. Every dollar I make goes toward causes that help people, unlike you people who just hoard wealth for yourselves. Howard couldn't help but laugh. Hoard wealth? I've donated more money to charity than you've probably ever seen, but I don't go around bragging about it on television. Because your charity work isn't newsworthy, Harry said with devastating casual cruelty. When I donate money or start a foundation, it inspires others to give. When you do it, nobody cares. The audacity of the statement left everyone speechless. Here was a man so deluded, so completely convinced of his own importance, that he believed his charity work mattered more than anyone else's, simply because of who he was. Sunny shook her head in disbelief. Nobody cares? Howard has raised millions for animal rescue organizations. Whoopi has supported countless causes. Joy has been advocating for women's rights for decades. But none of that matters because we're not royalty? It matters, Harry said condescendingly. It's just not as impactful as what I can accomplish. That's not your fault. It's just reality. Reality? Howard's voice was getting dangerously quiet now, the way it did when he was truly angry. You want to know what reality is? Reality is that you're sitting in an American television studio, being paid by American companies, living in an American house, and insulting the American people who made all of that possible. Harry's face contorted with rage. I'm not insulting anyone. I'm trying to educate people. I'm trying to show Americans that there's more to life than reality television and fast food. By calling us common and saying we don't matter? Joy shot back. By trying to elevate the conversation, Harry screamed, completely losing control now. But you people are too stupid to understand what I'm trying to do. The word hung in the air, like a toxic cloud. Stupid. He had just called the panel, and by extension the American viewing audience, stupid. Whoopi stood up slowly, her voice shaking with controlled fury. Too stupid? Too stupid to understand the great Prince Harry? Yes, Harry shouted, apparently beyond caring about the consequences of his words. Yes, you're all too stupid. You worship celebrities instead of leaders. You care more about entertainment than education. You've turned everything into a joke. Howard stood up too, towering over Harry despite being seated just moments before. A joke? You think we're a joke? This entire country is a joke, Harry exploded, his face now completely red, spittle flying from his mouth. You have no culture, no history, no real values. You're all just children playing dress-up, pretending to be adults. The studio erupted into complete chaos. Audience members were booing, shouting, some heading for the exits in disgust. The panel was on their feet, talking over each other, trying to respond to the most insulting tirade ever delivered on daytime television. But Harry wasn't done. You want to know what's really pathetic? He continued, his voice rising above the noise. You're all so desperate for approval from people like me that you'll invite us on your shows and pretend we're friends. But we're not friends. We never could be friends. We're from completely different worlds. Howard held up his hands, trying to restore some semblance of order. Different worlds? Yeah, we're getting that message loud and clear, Prince. You're from the world of spoiled brats, and we're from the world of people who actually work for a living. Work? Harry laughed maniacally. You call this work? Sitting around gossiping about people who actually accomplish things? This isn't work. This is a hobby that someone decided to pay you for. Sunny stepped forward, her legal training helping her maintain composure even in the face of such outrageous behavior. Gossiping? We discuss important political and social issues every single day. You discuss celebrity drama and pop culture nonsense, Harry corrected her. When was the last time you had a serious conversation about foreign policy or international relations? We had the Secretary of State on last month, Joy pointed out. To ask him about his favorite restaurants? Harry sneered. That's not journalism. That's entertainment masquerading as news. Howard was done trying to be reasonable. You know what, Your Highness? You're absolutely right. We are entertainers. But at least we're honest about what we do. We don't pretend to be saving the world while insulting everyone around us. I am saving the world, Harry shouted. Or trying to anyway, but it's impossible when you have to deal with people like you. The section ends with Harry completely unhinged, having insulted not just the panel but the entire American audience, setting up the explosive finale where his behavior becomes so outrageous that he'll be physically removed from the studio. People like us? Whoopi's voice cut through Harry's delusional rant like a sword. People like us who built careers from nothing? People like us who actually understand what struggle means? Harry whirled around to face her, his eyes wild with an almost manic intensity. Struggle? You call sitting in air-conditioned studios talking into camera struggle? Try being hunted by paparazzi from the moment you're born. Try having every move you make analyzed by the entire world. Nobody forced you to be here. Joy screamed back. You chose this life. You chose to come to America. You chose to go on talk shows. I chose to try to make a difference. Harry's voice cracked with emotion, but it wasn't sympathetic emotion. This was the sound of someone completely disconnected from reality. But it's impossible when you're surrounded by intellectual peasants. The gasps from the audience were audible even over the chaos. Intellectual peasants. He had actually called them intellectual peasants. Howard's face went completely still. In all his years of dealing with difficult guests, controversial topics, and explosive personalities, he had never encountered someone so thoroughly convinced of their own superiority, while simultaneously demonstrating the exact opposite. Intellectual peasants? Howard repeated quietly, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. Did you just call us intellectual peasants? If the description fits, Harry replied with a casual shrug that suggested he genuinely didn't understand why everyone was so upset. You people think TMZ is news. You think social media is communication. You're all completely uneducated about the real world. Sunny had reached her absolute breaking point. Uneducated? I have a law degree from Harvard. Whoopi is an Emmy winner and best-selling author. Joy has been in journalism for decades. What exactly makes you more educated than us? I was educated by the best tutors money could buy, Harry replied matter-of-factly. I was raised in palaces, surrounded by art and culture that most people only see in museums. I've met world leaders since I was a child. My education isn't something you can buy with student loan. The sheer arrogance of the statement left everyone momentarily speechless. Here was a man who had just dismissed decades of professional achievement and advanced degrees because he had grown up wealthy. Howard finally found his voice. World leaders? Buddy, you met world leaders because your grandmother was important. That's not an achievement. That's just being born lucky. Lucky? Harry's voice rose to a near shriek. Lucky? Do you think it's lucky to have your entire life planned out for you before you're old enough to walk? Do you think it's lucky to never know if people like you for who you are or what you represent? Cry me a river. Joy shot back. Most people would love to have your problems. Most people are too stupid to understand that wealth and privilege come with responsibilities, Harry replied, apparently oblivious to how this sounded. You all think being royal is just parties and fancy clothes, but it's actually about service and duty. Service? Whoopi laughed bitterly. You quit. You literally quit your job and moved to another country to make money off your royal connections. I left a corrupt institution to find a platform where I could actually make a difference. Harry corrected her with the patience of someone explaining basic concepts to a child. Something you people would understand if you weren't so focused on ratings and advertising revenue. Howard stood up and walked around the desk, getting closer to Harry. Advertising revenue? Advertising revenue pays for this show, which gives us a platform to discuss important issues with millions of viewers. But according to you, none of that matters, because we're just common people, right? Right, Harry agreed without hesitation. You're entertainers pretending to be important. I'm actually important pretending to be an entertainer. The audacity of the statement was so breathtaking that for a moment, nobody could respond. The man had just declared himself inherently important while dismissing everyone else as pretenders. But Howard had heard enough. That's it. We're done here. Done? Harry looked genuinely confused. We still have 10 minutes left in the segment. No, we don't, Howard replied firmly. Because you just insulted our audience, our country, and every single person in this building. The interview is over. Harry's face went through a series of expressions, confusion, disbelief, and then finally, pure rage. You can't end the interview. I'm not finished speaking. Yeah, well, I am finished listening, Howard shot back. Security. Security? Harry stood up from his chair, his voice hitting an almost hysterical pitch. You're calling security on me? Do you know who I am? Yeah, I know exactly who you are, Howard replied with deadly calm. You're a spoiled brat who thinks his last name makes him special. But this is America, and your last name doesn't mean anything here. Harry's face turned a shade of red that bordered on purple. Doesn't mean anything? I'm a prince of the British Empire. I have more influence in my little finger than all of you combined. Then use that influence somewhere else, Whoopi called out. Because you're not welcome here anymore. 2 security guards appeared at the edge of the set, moving slowly but deliberately toward the guest area. Harry noticed them, and his voice went up another octave. You cannot have me removed. This is outrageous. This is unprecedented. What's unprecedented? Sunny said, standing up and pointing at him. Is a guest coming on a talk show and insulting everyone in sight. I've never seen anything like it. Because you've never had anyone with real class on this show before, Harry screamed, completely losing what little composure he had left. You're all used to dealing with reality TV stars and failed actors. You don't know how to handle actual royalty. Joy had finally had enough. Actual royalty? You're a reality TV star now. You're doing the exact same thing as everyone else you look down on. I am not a reality TV star. Harry's voice cracked as he shouted. I am using media platforms to spread awareness about important causes. There's a difference. The only difference is that you think you're better than everyone else," Howard replied, gesturing for the security guards to move closer. Harry noticed the guards approaching, and his demeanor changed completely. Gone was any pretense of royal dignity or composure. This was now a full-blown tantrum. "Don't you dare touch me!" he screamed at the security guards. "I am a member of the British royal family. You cannot lay hands on me." "Sir, we need you to come with us," one of the guards said politely but firmly. "I am not going anywhere," Harry shrieked, backing away from them. "This is assault. This is an international incident. You people have no idea what you're doing." Howard watched the scene unfold with a mixture of disgust and fascination. International incident? Buddy, you're just a guy having a meltdown on daytime TV. I am not just a guy. Harry's voice had reached a pitch that was almost painful to listen to. I am a prince. I matter. My opinions matter. My voice matters. Your voice matters so much that we're cutting your microphone, Joy called out, making a slashing gesture across her throat to the sound technicians. Harry's mouth kept moving, but suddenly, no sound was coming through the speakers. The realization that he had been silenced seemed to push him over the final edge. He started gesticulating wildly, pointing at each panel member in turn, his mouth forming words that the audience couldn't hear, but could easily imagine based on his facial expressions and body language. "Can we get those mics back on?" Howard asked with a wicked grin. "I want everyone to hear this." The sound came back just as Harry was screaming, "You are all peasants. Peasants. You worship money because you have no breeding, no culture, no understanding of what true nobility means." The security guards had reached him now, one on each side. "Sir, please come with us peacefully." "Peacefully?" Harry's voice hit a note so high it was almost a whistle. "There is nothing peaceful about this. This is barbaric. This is exactly what I would expect from a nation of commoners." Even as the guards began to escort him toward the exit, Harry kept talking, his voice getting more shrill and desperate with each word. "You think this is over?" he called back to the panel. "You think you can just dismiss me? I will remember this. Everyone will remember this. You have made an enemy of the British Crown." "The British Crown?" Whoopi called after him. "Honey, you quit the British Crown, remember?" But Harry wasn't listening anymore. As the security guards guided him toward the studio exit, he continued his tirade. "This is why America will never be truly great," he screamed over his shoulder. "Because you tear down anyone who tries to elevate you. You're all crabs in a bucket pulling each other down." Howard followed them part way, unable to resist getting in one final shot. "Elevate us? You called us stupid peasants? That's not elevation. That's just being a jerk." "I called you what you are." Harry's voice was fading as they reached the exit, but he was still screaming at the top of his lungs. "And someday you'll realize I was right. Someday you'll wish you had listened to me." The studio doors closed behind him with a solid thud, cutting off his voice mid-sentence. For a moment, the entire studio was silent except for the sound of everyone trying to catch their breath. Howard walked back to his seat slowly, shaking his head in disbelief. The panel members were all staring at the doors where Harry had just been removed, as if they couldn't quite believe what they had just witnessed. Finally, Howard looked directly into the camera. "Ladies and gentlemen, that was Prince Harry. And that, folks, is what happens when privilege goes completely off the rails." The audience erupted in applause, not the polite golf claps they had started with, but genuine, thunderous approval for watching someone finally hold an entitled celebrity accountable for their behavior. Whoopi was the first to speak. "In 30 years of television, I have never seen anything like that. That was the most spectacular meltdown in talk show history," Joy added, still shaking her head in amazement. Sonny looked directly at the camera, and it was all caught on tape, every word of it. Howard leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. "Sometimes people show you exactly who they really are, and sometimes, if you're really lucky, they do it on live television." The cameras kept rolling as the panel tried to process what had just happened, but the story was already over. In less than 20 minutes, Prince Harry had transformed from respected royal guest to the most despised celebrity in America, all through his own words and actions. And every single second of it had been broadcast live to millions